Thank you, whoever did that. Right, so item 2, to note the membership of the committee for this forthcoming year. So in addition to myself and Nick Rain as Vice Chairman, then we have Councillors Steve Carr, Councillors Jim Creamer and John Ogle, and then from the City, Sam Harris, Helen Kelsey, and Mike Edwards is now replacing Georgia Power. Sorry. So is everybody all right noting that? Happy with that?
So, excuse me, just noting it is a permanent change.
Yes, it says here will replace. Yes. Yeah. Okay, right. So minutes of the last meeting held on the 10th of March. With lots of new members, I was going to say for those who were there, but in actual fact, everybody in this room present at the moment, I think, were actually there. So, can we approve those minutes? Is that okay with everybody? To approve them. Thank you very much indeed. Item 4. Apologies for absence.
Okay, so you've got Councillor Carr, Councillor Vane, and Councillor Harris, which will all be recorded as other.
Okay. Thank you very much. Item 5, declarations of interest by either members or officers. Any pecuniary interests? None. Any private interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary? None. Thank you very much. So, on to the substantive items. And the first one, item 6, is the Joint Committee introduction for new councillors. We're a bit devoid of new councillors, I think, aren't we? I don't know, Matt, is there anything you want to say? But this is all really aimed at, is it better to defer this to the next meeting?
I think it is. We could defer it to the next meeting, Chair. All I would say is this does include a copy of the protocol, effectively the terms of reference of the committee. But it's worth. Thank you. It is worth noting that we will have to revisit the protocol when the East Midlands Combined Authority comes into place, because that body will become the local transport authority for the area and will have its own governance arrangements, and the local authorities will retain the highway authority function. So we'll need to ensure that the protocol is updated prior to May on the formation of the county combined authority to reflect that.
Right, so yes, at this stage, being there aren't any new councillors present, I think we should just note this for now and move on, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much indeed. So, item 7, protocol for collaborative working on mineral and waste matters. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report seeks committee's approval of the appended protocol, which sets out how the city and county councils will work collaboratively on minerals and waste matters, which they have been doing now for many years, and in particular with respect to drawing up the waste level plan, which is a joint plan which covers both administrative areas. Not a great deal more to say, just happy to take any questions or comments on the appended protocol. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions or comments in relation to the protocol? The recommendation is that we approve the protocol, which is appended to the report. Can you just stick your mic on, please, Mark?
Because there was a time when coal was really important here. It was a big issue for the mineral planning, and no doubt clay as well. So what minerals are left that we actually care about now? Is it just the chippings for construction?
It's probably more sand and gravel, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, the county has significant resources of sand and gravel in the Trent Valley and also in the Idle Valley in the north of the county. We should mention brick clay. There's still significant. There's two big brick kilns in the county, served by adjacent brick quarries, clay quarries. We also have nationally significant deposits of gypsum in the county. There's a large open cast gypsum mine just to the south of Newark, and then there's all the underground workings that take place from British Gypsum Base at Eastleek. So yeah, there's deposits of Sherwood sandstone as well, another important aggregate, and obviously oil as well. There's a lot of oil extracted in the county, and that has been happening since World War II. So yeah, there is still significant amounts of mineral in the county of various descriptions. Yeah.
And in terms of joint interest, city-county interest, it's worth noting that there has been a request for a screening report for a future planning application for sand and gravel extraction at Barton in Fabis, near Clifton, and that spans both authorities.
Yeah, I'm just talking about Barton and Fabis, and I think there is a potential or a possibility. I think somebody had to safeguard. There might be some potential for gypsum open cast near the Rattle-on-Sword power station as well.
Yeah.
But that's just safeguarding it or protecting the rights for the future. Never say never.
Well, the moratorium remains in place.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? No. So, come with the recommendation is to approve that. Is everybody in favour? Can we approve that? Lovely. Thank you very much. So, item 8, similar topic, update on mineral and waste matters.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this just summarises existing matters on minerals and waste. With regards to minerals, we have a minerals local plan which was adopted in March 2021, and there'll be a statutory requirement to commence a review of that plan in 2026. As Matt has just alluded to, both councils have recently received a scoping request under the Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations with regards to a planning application for sand and gravel extraction at Barton on land close to Barton in Fabis. The scoping exercise effectively gives both authorities the opportunity to set out the matters that they feel need to be covered in any environmental statement which will accompany a future planning application. As Matt has said, it does cross the boundaries and covers both areas. With regards to waste, the county and city are preparing their single joint waste local plan to replace the waste course strategy which was adopted by both councils in 2013, and also some saved policies in the waste local plan dating back to 2002. As you see, the overall aim of the plan is to ensure that there is a sufficient range of sites to meet expected future demand for waste management, driven by the waste hierarchy, which seeks to push waste up the waste hierarchy, to moving away from disposal to landfill and seeking to prevent or to reuse and recycle waste. And there's a graphic there of the waste hierarchy on the second page of the report. If we can introduce Emma Brooke, who is the County Council's Principal Planning Officer in our planning policy team. Emma has been leading on the work on the preparation of the new waste local plan, and Emma's just going to give a brief talk about where we are in terms of the plan preparation and where we go next, and what how the plan has changed in recent times in light of public consultation exercises. So I'll hand over to Emma, and we can take any questions after that.
Over to you.
Thank you. So yes, as Jonathan's saying, we've previously done a draft waste local plan which went out for consultation last year in 2022, and we received a lot of comments and feedback from members of the public, waste operators and statutory consultees, and based upon that feedback we've been amending the policies contained within the plan to make sure that they are found sound, so they are justified and effective as the plan moves forward. What we're doing is preparing we're calling it a pre-submission draft plan, and within it, very similar to the draft plan, it contains a vision, strategic objectives, and 8 strategic policies and 12 development management policies. As Jonathan talked about, the vision details the overarching aim of the plan, which ensures sufficient sites to treat waste in the most sustainable way and help drive waste up the waste hierarchy. The waste hierarchy concept is to firstly prevent waste from occurring, and then secondly to reuse or repair products. Once waste is then generated, because it can't be reused, then it's about treating it in the most sustainable way possible. So recycling it first and foremost, then recovering it, for example, through energy from waste recovery, and then the final option, which is the last resort, is disposing of the waste. So, for example, disposing it in landfill sites. The strategic objectives that follow the vision are then detailing elements about that and outlining how we'll meet the vision through them. The strategic policies focus on ensuring that there are adequate facilities to handle waste arising in suitable locations as far up the hierarchy as possible. The key topics that the strategic policies cover include broad locations for waste facilities, climate change, and the sustainable movement of transport of waste. One of the key changes we've made to the 8 strategic policies since the draft plan for the pre-submission draft plan is amending a policy that outlines the broad locations for waste facilities. So previously the policy specified what type and size of facility would be appropriate in certain locations, and we've amended this policy so it is a bit more nuanced and outlines how facilities should be located near the sources of waste to minimise transport, but they should be appropriate to the size of the location, so it's no longer as prescriptive as before and as the previous policy in the waste core strategy. To help deliver the strategic policies, the plan then has 12 development management policies, and they are providing the detailed criteria against which future applications for waste development is assessed against. They cover a range of different types of policies, from environmental impacts and highway safety. Their policies are there to ensure they provide sufficient protection to the immunity of local communities and the natural and historic environment, and we've made amendments to these policies to ensure that, based upon a lot of comments from statutory consultees who are specialists in the topics. In particular, we've made amendments to the biodiversity policy to reflect the new requirements introduced by the Environment Act in 2021, including that all development should deliver a 10% biodiversity net gain. Finally, the plan doesn't allocate any sites for waste facilities. Instead, we have a general site criteria policy which guides waste facilities to potential suitable locations depending on the type of facility that's proposed. So the pre-submission draft plan will be taken to the County Council's Cabinet and City Executive Board in July for approval to be published, and then published for public consultation, which is and this will be the formal consultation, which we anticipate to start following the summer holiday period. So it's sometime late August or early September, and that's welcoming comments and responses on the soundness of the plan. And if there's any questions, that's
Okay, thank you very much for that. Any questions or comments, Mike?
Yeah. Sorry, on the map, if you could get. Matt, would you be able to get a memo produced both for me and Councillor Spain about Barton in Fabus and what the times for these various phases are? Because I didn't listen carefully earlier. I just think there's a sense in which, if that's coming up again, we need to plan to handle that properly.
So, which was the name of the other councillor?
Councillor Spain.
Spec.
Hayley Spain. Just a general thing. I mean, I'm a great advocate of the pyramid, the waste hierarchy pyramid. I think it's a terrific thing, except, of course, when you look at it, Nottingham's situation, and possibly this is going to be the case with the county if Ratcliffe on Soar goes certain ways, it's this thing about talking about energy recovery. Now, I know that's not just incineration. I know sometimes you can extract gas from tipping sites, but there is so much more to what happens at our incinerator than energy recovery. We're so stuck in this mold of what we do is we get super hot water under pressure, driving a turbine, giving us electricity, and then driving the biggest district heating scheme in the country. And we overlook the fact that of the stuff that comes out the bottom, the ferrous materials are taken out and reused. The aluminium is taken out and reused. All the other metals are treated or identified in a special way. They actually go to Holland, I think, for specialist treatments to actually get out the gold and the other stuff that's going in there. Then a huge amount of the sort of stone and the glass that's in there gets treated, I think, in Staffordshire to make road materials. You know how we're talking about how we got stones for roads and stuff like that. We actually, because we incinerate in Nottingham, we actually send stuff that helps build the roads. And I think sometimes that's the problem with the waste hierarchy diagram, is it never understands what that process is. And I think we always need to check ourselves when we talk about extraction from energy, because some of those processes that give us energy also give us reuse and recycling. So I think it's just a thing I think we should always be ready to say, and I think that applies to Ratcliffe-on-Soar if that's where it's going. To which our fundamental problem with incineration is, how do you get the heat to places that they can use it? And if they even get around to fusion, they'll have to work out what they're going to do with the heat that they create. And I think we've just got to start wondering if someone somewhere hasn't got a better solution to the use of spare heat. Certainly, that sense of heat pumped into the ground could perhaps get transmitted and extracted elsewhere to form other forms of district heating schemes. I know underneath most of the city we've actually got derelict mines with mine water that's very hot and actually can drive ground source heat pumping systems for domestic properties and offices, no doubt. And I just wonder if there's anybody's got any imagination about what we can do with heat, even including if we transmit it underground or pump it underground and collect it elsewhere. I mention that because I think that Ratcliffe-on-Soar talks about was it 8 miles or 8 kilometres? I'm getting mixed up now, but something like that to get to housing, to feed the new housing that's being planned south of Clifton Estate. And I think a pipe like that is £1 million a kilometre. If someone can correct me on this, I'll be delighted, because I can't remember precisely what the numbers are. But transferring in heat in pipes over land is actually quite expensive, and also kind of requires you to make sure the heat goes to a specific location. Whereas if there's something more imaginative can be done with ground source heat pumping from the ground, and that we then realise that we refresh that heat by more general purposes from incineration plants. I just think something better could come out of this. I don't know enough, and I don't know if our officers have got any sort of specialist knowledge or expertise with a few or contacts whereby they could actually find out if anybody's doing something cleverer with heat than we are, even though, as I say, we are driving the largest district heating system in the country. I also think the other extraordinary thing is coming is the recycling of food waste, and which started a trial in Berridge, which is 1/4 the size of what we used to run in the city. We used to run Berridge, correct me again if I'm getting some of this wrong, Meadows, and 2 other wards now. I forgot the name of those wards, but we actually had, thank you, so I don't know, and a bit of a reputation developed that somehow it hadn't been successful. Now, what that was about was that 1 or 2 people picked on the things like the very small specialist design little bins that you had for your food waste got kicked around sometimes and stuff like that. I think that's what that was about. But actually, most of the times I've spoken to people who remembered the scheme, because if we finished it in 2012, I think, what they remembered was they actually quite liked it. and it is this thing of you getting your food waste into a sealed unit very, very quickly, so the smells keeping food waste in the house much diminished. And the reason it went wrong was it got more and more expensive to process it. You actually had to pay to have it, or pay significant amounts to have it. And we used to have to ship it to Norwich to get it processed. So that sense of it being a green thing, I think the world's changed now. We've got 2 anaerobic digesters at Colic, and one, I always get this wrong, Alfreton or Ilkeston, I can't remember which. The one at Colic, I think they charge you a bit more, but if you chuck a tin of baked beans into the one at Colic, it breaks open the tin of baked beans, eats the beans, and chucks out the tin, spits out the tin. It's like the technology in this kind of stuff is really changing. I think the one at Ilkeston Alfreton is half the price to get rid of than at Colic. Now, the expectation upon the City Council, I don't know what the situation is on the other councils in Nottinghamshire, but expectation is that we're supposed to have all our city covered for food recycling within 4 years. Have I got that right, Matt? Can you remember?
It sounds right to me.
And the figures are extraordinary. And I can't remember where around they are, but I think 30% of our waste is digestible in this kind of way, and 60% of it gets converted into something useful by doing digestion. Those are huge figures for what we're about to do with waste. And of course, the government set the expectation. They haven't given us the revenue stream to do it. So I can't quite remember how we're going to try and finance that, but I think it's in our 4-year plan. And as I say, the feedback I'm getting on Berridge is that it's very, very significant. But if you think about what we're talking about here, about a total waste plan, I hope we've got that sense of just what a scale of change is on its way if we are going to be doing a collection of food waste and anaerobic digestion. It's really, I think, quite a big story. I think the only thing I'm really asking for is the timescale on Barton. If somebody could find out if other people do better with heat than us, if we could always remember to talk about energy extraction and the collection of materials. It's not just burning. And it's one of the problems we've got with the reputation of incineration is people are just like, you just burn it. No. We're getting stuff out of that that wouldn't be going out of others. I mean, I think in a very ambitious world, we'd also look to see if we couldn't get into some of the tips that we've got and actually start extracting materials out of those tips. And again, it seems to me like somebody somewhere should be doing some kind of trial. And again, that might be happening elsewhere in the world, where you actually get in there and start digging the stuff back out and processing it, either for digestion or mineral extraction that will be in there. And actually, that will create an opportunity for relief of the problems we've got of not having the such capacity to tip anymore. But I think that might be, a little bit in the future. But this stuff, it ought to be the kind of stuff that we can talk about with more a greater sense of purpose and a greater sense of science and engineering, because I think there are opportunities to do things here that I think could be really good.
Yeah, well, I think some of the things you mentioned, like they are encompassed in that pyramid, probably in 2 or 3 of the different sections. You can't itemise absolutely everything that goes on within the pyramid, but I don't know either Jonathan or Emma, any response?
Yeah, I mean, with regards to the incinerator and all of the ash that comes out is taken to a site in Bunny in the south of the county for processing, and it is now used as a secondary aggregate. I think they can make breeze blocks and those types of things out of the clinker. So yes, the waste hierarchy, it's quite a simplistic diagram, that is, and I think we accept that there are a single waste management facility can actually cover more than one of those elements of the waste hierarchy. You talked about use of heat, and I think you're right in terms of what you're talking about for the facility that's been granted permission at Ratcliffe-on-Soar, and the committee report for that did discuss, the transport of the heat and how far it was up to Fareham Pastures. but there is a condition attached to the permission requiring them to review that. And I think potentially as the local development order comes forward for the wider power station site, we might see opportunities there to use the heat that would be generated from that scheme. And then recycling of food waste, well, that is coming in as part of the Environment Act. You talked about scale of change, and I think there is quite a long lead in time, but that's going to be required to provide the infrastructure to actually then deal with the food waste that's collected. So you're right. And just one final thing as well, you talked about going back into old landfills. It's not quite a household landfill, but we at the county, we have got an application at the moment to rework some old PFA lagoons, which took the power station ash. This is in the north of the county, top side of Retford. So we have an application now to kind of dig all that up. And again, to use it as a secondary aggregate. So I wouldn't necessarily discount the idea of household waste landfill sites being seen as a potential resource in the future. But yeah, it's some way off at the moment. Sorry, I'm terrible with my three letter acronym. Pulverised fuel ash. So yes, it's effectively the ash that comes out of the burning of the coal at the power stations.
You shouldn't have told him that.
And
and
for a long time it was pumped into various, usually old sand and gravel pits. There's quite a few down at Hoveringham, which took ash from Staythorpe power station when that was a coal-fired power station.
And I know it's slightly different with the desulfurisation plant at Ratcliffe on Soar, recovers, actually delivers gypsum back to British Gypsum.
Yes, I was around when we were doing. I was part of the process that helped go to get the bypass. It was extraordinary. So the first three things I did as a county councillor, I was all.
But for go to it was ridiculous.
So on behalf of Rushcliffe, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Right, we've got a queue of people. Sorry, Tim, was this if you could? Yeah.
Just to say that it might be worth having a think about what London Underground are doing, because London Underground are extracting heat from the underground and putting it into district heating systems in area housing schemes in Islington. So that might be, in relation to other heat networks, that might be worth something that we could investigate.
Okay. Emma, was there anything you wanted to add at all?
Earlier, just to add small to what Jonathan was saying, really. So we're in regard to incinerators and recovering of heat. Obviously, that's something that Eastcroft does really well, and it is something that we've amended in the strategic policies before we asked for energy recovery facilities to either provide heat and or power, and we've changed that to require them to provide power and to look at heat, and that they need to have some sort of scope to use that heat from the incineration process to really encourage that. And just in regards to the collection of food waste, yes, that will be introduced, and it will require more facilities to then handle that food waste, like you say, through anaerobic digestion. And something that the plan does, it goes up to 2038, so obviously it's a long time. And what we've done as a background assessment to make sure we've got sufficient facilities is we look at what the potential arisings would be, and then we look at how much of that would be recycled, which includes anaerobic digestion. And so when we've chosen what percent of recyclings would be, so what the level of percentage would be would be recycled, in the future we have considered that we will be collecting food waste, or the authorities will be collecting food waste from their households. And so that's kind of built into the plan to make sure there's sufficient facilities available to handle that waste.
Okay, thanks for that. Great. So moving on, Jim and then John.
Yes, just very quickly, the debate. We've had some of this before, but it always changes, especially with the new Environment Act changing it for us. So I'm just wondering if it's sometime in the not too distant future, particularly for the new members, we could have a presentation again, and maybe even the site visits we've had before to inform them of what's going on. I mean, I'm talking about new members but at the moment. But it might be worth doing that. Mike's made about the underground heat source, etc. And I was reading an article the other week, which is quite good, about actually using instead of drilling for oil for fracking, using the same equipment to literally go down a mile, 2 miles to pump water up, to actually more of a district heating scheme just put in wherever. So people are looking at this and how to extract and use heat. So I think it'll be a worthwhile presentation at some time in the future, regardless. So just my tuppence worth.
Okay, John.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, pulverised fuel ash. The Lound area, it stands 12 foot proud, so not only have they filled it in, it's 12 foot above the surrounding level. And what they use that pulverised ash for is breeze blocks. And of course, they're producing too much to use for breeze blocks, but it's actually a really helpful material for that, and that's what it's used for. But there's another location of a massive pulverised fuel ash, and that's under the Newark bypass. And there is a scheme to rejuvenate the ring road at Newark. So the section from Farndon to past the sugar beet factory there is full of that fuel ash. So I hope you look into that to use that again. Thank you.
I think it's more than rejuvenation, John. I think it's a major rebuild or improvement. But anyway, right. Not microphone.
Sorry. I think what's been said is that the reason we've got a big district heating scheme is that we did it at the time that we rebuilt St Anne's, and we actually put a requirement on people to have the district heating scheme, and they're still there. People are contracted to take in energy from district heating when they live in those houses. Then actually we've run out of capacity to we're kind of hoping to expand the incinerator, and we have got plenty of customers for district heating in the city centre. And I know I've already talked about the cost of how much it's going to be to take it to just south of Clifton. But if you took it another couple of miles up to the city centre, there's a network there ready to use the heat. And I think there is a sense in which just put it in your mind. So that sense you might want to say it might be hard to put contracts in place to require people to use it just south of Clifton, but there's a ready willing customer base in the city centre, and that might be another thing just to be thinking about when you're considering what happens in the future, because that heat needs to be used, and if we can get it up there, there's plenty of big developments that will be ready to use it.
Okay, thanks for that. Right, so it is purely for noting, so I think we've duly noted that, I think. So let's move on to item 9 and the transport updates. And I think, Tim, are you kicking things off?
Yeah.
On the right. That's
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Well, it's actually pleasing to actually report some positive things going on here. So, in terms of rail, I've set out in the report that in terms of rail services, there's been a reintroduction of a number of services from the May timetable. It's not the full pre-COVID timetable, but it's some way towards it. Interestingly, yesterday, the ORR released some figures about passenger use and revenue on the railway, and for the past 4 months, and East Midlands Railway is now topping the table in terms of recovery from COVID. So they've now got 101% of previous demand on their service. They've been helped by, to an extent, troubles on other operators, but to be top of the table in terms of the National League, that's really quite a good thing. Quite a good thing, I think. There is some way in restoring some services, so we're not to go on the main part of it, and there are still issues with Northern and TPE and cross country as well, which need some sort of resolution. Turning to sort of more strategic things, I put down here that Midlands Connect and East Midlands Councils have recently been doing some strategic work on business cases for enhancements of local services between Nottingham, Newark, and Lincoln, and also between Nottingham and Grantham. And their work there, what I've suggested is that actually they should come and speak to our September meeting on the results of those particular pieces of work. And then, of course, we go on to HS2 and the Midlands Mainline electrification. It's difficult to know what to say here because in public the Department of Transport is not said anything, but of course there's a lot of speculation in the press particularly about HS2 and the work at Euston and also the various legs beyond the initial phase 1 area. And of course then for us there's a significant issue about the Midlands Mainline electrification and the need for that to be extended beyond the current limit of works at Wigston South Junction.
And has that been sort of automatically delayed in line with HS2 delays?
Not necessarily, Chair, but again, things are not being put out in the public domain to say whether it's going to be delayed or not, or paused. So obviously that has a bit of an impact on certainly on business confidence in actually investing out the region. So that's again something to watch. And I suppose then the other part of this report, and just to report about in terms of good news stories, both the county and ourselves have been successful with active travel funding. And certainly in the case of the Porchester Road Cycle Scheme, we will be consulting with that later on in the year, and so everyone on both sides of the boundary will have the chance to comment then. Kevin, do you want to add on to anything to that?
I think it's worth stating that the Midland Mainline electrification, although there's doubts over the timing and the investigation is so consideration and investigative work is ongoing, and they're still pushing for that aspect, but we still hope to secure that development opportunity. Don't think I need to add anything on the whole claim because there's not much to say at this stage.
I think everybody be grabbing their dictionaries to see what the difference is between pause and delay. My understanding from dictionary is that pause means to stop momentarily, whereas delay, I think, has a slightly different connotation, but it's probably semantics. But there we go. Anyway, Jim.
Just a couple of minutes. Just a question on the electrification, which I think everybody agrees with. We should be happening. But do you actually know what's happening with the bimodal? I mean, is that going to be delayed, stopped while electrification? Because once fully electrified, there's no need for bimodal. So just wondering what's happening with that. And then on a completely separate issue, about the consultation of Porchester Road. For those who may not know, Porchester Road pavements are entirely in the city, but most of the houses are in the county, in actual fact, Carlton West and Arnold South. So the houses on Porchester Road are in the county, but the pavements in the city. You have to have boundaries someplace, and Porchester Road's a perfect example of it. So just on the consultation, just making sure that we do actually make sure we do consult in the county as well. That's all.
Chair, and just to answer those two, the bi-mode trains are in production now and being tested, so they will be happening, and there will still be a need for the diesel engine in them. It will give flexibility when the overhead lines are not available, or for diversionary routes. So that part of the project is not delayed. In terms of Porchester Road, then yes, of course, we will ensure that we try and make sure that everybody on both sides of the boundary is fully consulted at the right time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit harsh on City Heights and Longmead, but there you are. Yeah, I mean, dear idea. And just where would the railways be if we weren't in a situation where the government was subsidising companies to see them through the rail strikes? I mean, you know, why don't you just pay the staff better rates and solve all those HR problems that we've got, and then actually focus on what spare money there is on actually getting improvement in the investment. To which it's a bit salutary, really. I was deputy leader for a while, and I used to go to these meetings where we'd all come together and say where next for regional transport. And we were sold that line, weren't we, that we needed 4-lane M1 and get rid of the hard shoulder. No, electrification of of the main line wasn't the priority this time around. And we so should have just not gone with that. We should have remembered the significance of us being able to say we've got the spark effect in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. You know, it would just change the way people perceive us if we had the spark effect. So I think got to keep going on that, and I'm disappointed really, because in the end they're talking about taking those hard shoulderless motorways out, aren't they?
Yeah, well, let's just stick to the.
Well, okay, but I think just to remind people, we just so should have stood up to that argument and said, look, we want the railways electrified. I also think it's a bit of a scandal what's going on with the delivery of new railways. Why are they overrunning so much on cost? Something ought to be trying to hold that to account. Do you know, under the new Labour government, we had PFI. And do you know what the rationale for PFI was? It was the way that the new underground lines in London overran on costs. So if you got people contracted at the early stages to deliver to a cost that they actually agreed, then you didn't get the overruns. Or if you got the overruns, the private sector had to pay. But it seems to be that they're doing overruns and expecting us to find the money. I just so think we must have gone backwards in terms of procurement. So just keep emphasising really that we need the electrification, and we need suppliers to be properly contracted so they supply to cost to the price that they've offered. Poacher line, I've not heard that before. Whose idea was that one? Yeah, I hope we're not going to give that one any kind of credence. Partly because everybody thinks of Lincoln as the poacher, not Grantham. Where's that one come from?
What do you mean? Where's it come from?
2.5.
Yeah, no. What do you mean? Where's it come
Well, I've
from?
never heard it referred to as the poacher line before.
Oh, well, sorry, I have.
So historically, it's always been called the poacher line, all the way between Nottingham and Skegness.
Okay, so it's just me and you, Jim, was it? I mean, we only work for the bloody railways, you know. It's just what the hell. But I am intrigued by the patronage numbers are up, and then of course we've got problems at Birmingham New Street. But it's also true with the traffic, isn't it? The traffic's getting back up to the levels it was before, isn't it? Is it now at 90%? I'm trying to think. And the tram is up to 90%, isn't it? So there is a sense in which, but what's happened is the spread has changed. The rush hours are much wider now. That's the thing that's actually changed. It's not we're covering all the volumes. If recovery is the right word, because arguably we want to reduce the amount of traffic, full stop. But it's the spread of the rush hours. It's the key factor to get grip of. Is that correct? Sorry.
Yeah, it is. The traffic levels are well in the 90s, but the change has been in terms of the levels at the peak periods. And yes, they've expanded, and you've got more traffic in the interpeak as behaviour has changed over time.
Yeah. How's that affected the way you think as a transport plan?
Well, certainly, yes, it does affect the way you think, because you've got to think about, Chair, that you have to think, well, actually, should we be placing more focus on leisure journeys and off-peak journeys rather than necessarily catering for the peak, because the peak is diminished. Certainly, business travel is recovering slightly. Leisure travel is much better. Certainly on Saturdays and Sundays, that's now the busiest days of the week. Even on operators like Northern, they are recording over 100% of their previous pre-COVID patronage on Saturdays and Sundays, and that's really going to change the way in which operators, Network Rail, are going to have to think about how they plan the service, because it probably means that instead of shutting the railway on a Saturday and a Sunday, you actually, for engineering works, you shut it perhaps for longer periods during the week when there are less people travelling. It's also worth noting that in terms of the Poacher Line, Poacher Line is obviously a community rail partnership, but there is going to be an issue with people travelling from Nottingham to Skegness during the summer, and there are special arrangements being put in place and pre-booking and other things to make sure that people who want to travel to Skegness can do so in a reasonable amount of comfort. It's not brilliant. Won't be a brilliant experience, but at least they are actively trying to manage it.
Maybe we should be selling fish and chips and ice cream on Nottingham Station to save them having the journey.
Well, actually, they are going to have various entertainers and free drinks and refreshments and children's games. That's actually part of the package. So, thank you.
Right, Jim.
Just very quickly on that, I'm going to help the staff, because I know a lot of the guards. They're not looking forward to it at all, because they can see quite a lot of hassle with people with pre-booking and coming to actually just catch the train. And there's going to be almost like two queues. There's going to be trouble, and they're literally expecting to have some aggro, put it that way. So yeah, because it's the guards that will actually face the problem when it comes to it. They're the ones in the platform staff. So although they're trying to manage it, it would be interesting to find out and see just exactly what happens, because at the moment it doesn't seem like they're planning it very well. I mean, I hope they do succeed, obviously, but it looks like at the moment there could be some chaos, some disruption for the people rather than the railway, if you like, when they're trying to go to Skegness, and that could actually hit the service quite badly, because over time you get a bad reputation. It takes time to get that back again.
I think on the Midland Main Line electrification, I think that's something we need to just make sure that East Midlands councils are still, because I think that's the prime platform. I think for us is to use that, no pun intended, to use that vehicle to keep pushing for that. Right.
Yeah, thank you. I have now looked up Wikipedia, and the Poacher Line is Grantham to Skegness. It's not Nottingham to Grantham. I knew there was a reason why I didn't relate
That's
to
why
it.
it's called the Lincolnshire Poacher.
Well, there we are. But whatever. It's not accurately described in the report. There we are. That's an achievement, isn't it? I mean, the thing I was aware of, meeting people during the picket lines, was how there's something going wrong with the cleaning services on the Skegness line. We're not putting enough resource in. We either just need longer trains, full stop, for Skegness, or we got to do something about helping people during those journeys. If they're I think they're too crowded, and all right, rationing them not to use it seems the bizarre way to tackle a transport situation. It just seems the wrong way around. So again, what can we do to be part of something that actually gets them to respond to a crisis in terms of having too many customers by actually supplying more capacity? That should be the answer. Can we be part of that? I don't know, Chair, whether you think it's worth asking the officers to put a memo together on the impact of changes in volumes and the spread of the peak, because maybe we do need to think about. I didn't think it was just a railway issue. I thought I was raising it in the context of actual car traffic as well. So there's something going on, and we've had all that thinking about what we have to do about travel and transport, and then one of the big things that's changing is we're not getting peaks in the way we used to get it, even though the volumes are nearly back to where they were. You must have something to tell us about that. Demonstrates wisdom above and beyond what I get at from reading Facebook,
Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're always looking at such things. I mean, ignoring the peak spreading, we're having to look at changing travel behaviour anyway. We've got to take on board decarbonisation, climate change issues, and all the rest of it. So we're always looking to alter the ways that we promote things and actively encourage different behaviours. The railways, though, going back to the railways, is a problem one, in that there is no more funding. So we've been promoting things like the Robin Hood line, but the message we're getting back from government is very much that yes, they will consider it, but they've got more schemes in the pot than they have funding to deliver them. And the emphasis at the moment is very much on maintaining the existing services that are still struggling post-COVID than it is introducing new services because there's no more money. So it is a tricky one.
Okay, right. This one is just for noting, so let's note all that. Thank you. Item 10, JPAL. Who's the... Mark, are you doing JPAL?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. You'll note from the report that the last meeting of Joint Planning Advisory Board was very recent. So, as is often the case, the reporting of the minutes are slightly out of sync. But just to give a very brief update on what's going on at the moment, the consultation on the strategic plan ended earlier this year, and we've been through all the responses that have been received on that. The plan is now being redrafted in the light of those responses, and some elements of the evidence base are about to be commissioned, things like the transport modelling and so on. So there's quite a lot of work to be done. We are hoping to get a plan published at the end of the year, but that is dependent on the timescales of some of the evidence-based elements. So yeah, that's currently where we are with the strategic plan. So far as Ashfield are concerned, they are intending to publish a local plan this calendar year. And Erewash are currently at their examination, although they have yet to confirm a timescale for hearing sessions.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, a lot of focus on getting sites available for housing to be developed. And then national debates on whether we now need to change our approach to the green belt and stuff like that. But I think there's another problem, and that is the actual delivery of housing on sites that's actually got planning permission. Now, I know sometimes that invites people into the sort of thing of, oh, well, these developers just go all of it for land banking. And I don't know that it's necessarily that. I think what's happened in the economy, particularly with the crisis that was triggered last August, and then the inflation there's been in construction materials and the cost of construction. But it is annoying. I mean, I've got a poster here on a building that you can actually see from London Road, just past the fire station as you go into the city, and it's for Cheney Place, which technically is an extension of the Hicking building site. And it says, this poster here, Cheney Place, 122 apartments, opening early 2023. You know, they thought they were going to have it built by now. And that developer's also got hold of another site where I think they've got about 350 apartments waiting. And all they've done is they've moved the earth around a little bit. It's a plan for, I think, 200 apartments. Forgive me if I got that number on that. At what's Truman's Street, but it's actually Trowbridge Island. And I've got homelessness problems in the Meadows. We need this housing to be provided. And so I don't know if JPAB has any scope or any potential for exploring, or whether we just need to do it as a city council. I don't know. Getting the developers to actually get this stuff built, because people need it. And if not, then let's hope Lisa Nandy with her mantra of council housing, that we're allowed to do it instead, because we haven't got the same need to make a profit on the development. We know if we run council housing, we make a surplus on what we run. There's crying need out there. People are desperate for a place to live, and we're stuck with a system that just, even with planning permission, all that focus on what we get quick and fast decisions made on planning. They've got 3 locations that would take 600 houses, 600, 700 apartments, and it's stuck. Nothing's being done, and it makes me very angry. And I don't know if I take the anger, to be honest. Yeah, perhaps it should be.
I think it's the councils need to be discussing with the applicants and the developers and putting conditions on that things are. I know part of the problem is limit. It's not just the cost of materials, but also the supply of them, or the lack of availability of materials as well. Which is, I think there are so many factors involved. I don't think it's something that the planning advisory board is going to be able to do much about. Jim?
Yeah, just on that, it's just a question more than anything else on the because we have exactly the same problem in Gedling, because it's mainly the district the districts, obviously, with the housing, apart from the city, of course, it's unitary. Is that the planning consultation that's happened? I think every district certainly has complained about this particular issue, about them buying the land, sitting on that, getting planning permission, and just moving a few bricks, but moving a little bit, and just waiting for the value to go up. I mean, yes, there are genuine reasons why things are delayed, but it's industrially delayed at the moment. It's more than just the Brexit, more than just the anything else with prices. So I'm just wondering on that planning consultation, which only finished a couple of months ago, I think, whether there's anything going to come back on that, or any guidance come back from it already. Because I'd like to see, actually, if we do give planning permission, that it is started with industry. It's literally started, not just actually pushing a few stones around, so that we do get people actually moving. And I would personally, and it is personal, because I would like to see that if a particular constructor has got this project and it's delayed X amount, well, they won't get planning permission until that's done. But that's to do with national law, and I'm just wondering how that consultation's gone.
There are 2 things I'd add to that. Thank you. The first is that part of the reason why house building is slowed down now is to do with interest rates going up, people therefore needing to pay significantly more for mortgages. So it's an affordability issue, as well as it's both supply and demand that are impacted on. So it's a double whammy. So far as the government consultation is concerned, we were told we would hear in the spring, and we're now in June. Even the civil servants spring are starting to look very stretched. I haven't got any news on that, I'm afraid. The changes to the NPPF and the approach to penalising developers in terms of being able to take into account their past track record in determining applications were supposed to be quite early matters to be resolved, but we're still waiting for the outcome of that.
Okay. Right. So again, that's for noting. It's just a report back from JPAB. So moving on, final item 11, the work programme. And I do notice, Mike, page 50, at the bottom box, it says Nottingham to Grantham to Skegness Poacher Line. So there you go.
Well, you backed that on Wikipedia.
Oh.
It's the Grantham to Skegness.
Yeah. Well, not really, because the website of the Poacher Line actually says, "Welcome to the Poacher Line, the award-winning community rail partnership which promotes the Nottingham to Skegness line." There you go. Don't believe everything you say in Wikipedia. I mean, blimey. Yeah, don't believe everything Wikipedia says about you either. Right. Any comments or questions on the work programme? No? Okay, great, lovely. That brings us to the end of the agenda then. So thank you very much for your attendance, and we look forward to hopefully to seeing the new members at the next meeting.
I will go back
Right.
to and find out. So anything that's gone wrong in the city and we'll try and sort it out.
Okay, right, lovely. Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you.